During World War II, one name echoed across every front line and carried with it a mixture of fear, anger, and absolute distrust. The Waffen-SS, the military wing of Hitler's SS organization, a force viewed by the Allies not as ordinary soldiers but as the ideological blade of the Nazi state, and understanding why the Allies showed virtually no mercy to this group requires exploring the long chain of events, battlefield behavior, political influence, and wartime perceptions that shaped their reputation. The Waffen-SS began as a small bodyguard unit for Adolf Hitler, but quickly evolved into a massive paramilitary structure designed not only to fight but to serve as a living symbol of Nazi ideology, meaning its members were trained in political loyalty, propaganda principles, and a harsh code of obedience that set them apart from the regular German army. As the war expanded, the Waffen-SS grew into dozens of divisions, some highly trained and well-equipped, others formed in desperation from conscripts across Europe, but all presented as elite formations whose identity was tied to the Nazi Party rather than traditional military command. When the Allies first encountered Waffen-SS units, they noted an unusually aggressive fighting style, described in military reports as relentless, unpredictable, and often resistant to surrender even when surrounded. Allied soldiers were frequently warned that these units fought with a fanatic determination rooted not just in training but in ideology, making encounters with them especially dangerous and emotionally charged. As the war progressed, intelligence reports and civilian testimonies from occupied territories circulated among Allied commanders, creating a perception, accurate in some cases, exaggerated in others, that Waffen-SS divisions were closely connected to brutal occupation policies, harsh treatment of prisoners, and ruthless enforcement actions, and even though historians today separate fact from rumor, the wartime belief was that the Waffen-SS operated with a level of ideological motivation that placed them outside the norms of conventional warfare. This reputation exploded during the 1944 Normandy campaign when several well-known SS divisions fought fiercely against American, British, and Canadian troops. Reports of prisoners not being treated properly deeply shocked frontline units, and whether individual incidents were widespread or isolated, the emotional impact spread instantly, leading Allied soldiers to conclude that Waffen-SS forces represented a uniquely dangerous threat that had crossed certain moral lines. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet view was even harsher. After years of catastrophic fighting, destroyed villages, and widespread suffering, the Red Army came to see the Waffen-SS as a direct symbol of the destructive policies imposed on their homeland, and by 1945 Soviet troops believed that SS units embodied the ideology responsible for the devastation of the Eastern Front, meaning surrender negotiations were tense, cautious, and often driven by the memory of what had happened earlier in the war. On top of battlefield encounters, propaganda on both sides strengthened the perception of the Waffen-SS as the ultimate embodiment of Hitler's war machine. Allied broadcasts, training films, and printed briefings warned soldiers about their extreme loyalty, strict internal discipline, and alleged involvement in harsh wartime actions, framing them as opponents who could not be trusted to act within normal military expectations. When the Battle of the Bulge erupted in late 1944, with Waffen-SS formations playing a central role, the emotional tension between Allied troops and SS divisions grew even stronger. During the chaotic early hours of the offensive, news spread of American prisoners being killed, shocking the Allied ranks and creating a deep, lasting anger that confirmed existing fears. From this point forward, American commanders noticed that frontline troops became significantly more hardened when facing SS units. Reports described encounters as colder, more cautious, and driven by the belief that these opponents would not extend mercy themselves. As 1945 approached, Waffen-SS soldiers discovered that surrendering was far more complicated than it was for regular Wehrmacht troops. Allied soldiers approached SS surrenders with suspicion, afraid of hidden weapons, last-minute attacks, or traps, and this created a nervous atmosphere in which tensions were high and misunderstandings could escalate quickly. Many SS members attempted to flee westward to be captured by American or British forces rather than Soviet troops, believing the Western Allies would treat them more predictably. But even then, interrogations were strict because Allied intelligence wanted to identify which units had been involved in harsh occupation policies or ideological enforcement missions. After the war, the Allied leadership made a definitive decision. The SS, including its military wing, was declared part of the broader structure responsible for supporting the Nazi regime, and although this did not mean every individual member was guilty of wrongdoing, the organization as a whole was judged dangerous, leading to investigations, trials, and restrictions on former members in the post-war world. Over time, historians have developed a more nuanced view, recognizing that the Waffen-SS included a wide range of divisions with different behaviors and varying levels of involvement in occupation policies. But the historical consensus remains that the Waffen-SS was fundamentally a political army shaped by ideology, one that operated under a system that blurred the line between military duty and political loyalty. For Allied soldiers during the war, this distinction mattered deeply. They believed they were not simply fighting German soldiers but confronting the most committed defenders of the Nazi worldview. And so, the reason the Allies showed no mercy to the Waffen-SS is rooted in wartime perception, battlefield experiences, political meaning, and the emotional weight carried by years of conflict. To the Allied troops, the Waffen-SS represented not just an enemy army, but the armed heart of a regime responsible for immense suffering across Europe. The result was a wartime relationship defined by caution, anger, distrust, and the belief that this particular opponent fought with a level of ideological intensity that made them fundamentally different from regular soldiers, shaping how they were treated from the beaches of Normandy to the final days of the war in Germany, and leaving behind one of the most complex and controversial legacies of World War II.